This is me, your host, Tristan Andrew, here to educate you on two famous Intermezzi by Italian opera composer Pietro Mascagni, and how each belongs in a different holiday, Easter and Halloween. Let me show you. Let's take a moment to review the state of opera in the last quarter of the 19th century. German composer Richard Wagner. His brilliant yet controversial focus on social redemption through music transformed opera. He perfected the use of the leitmotif, chromaticism, and the concept of all aspects of the opera itself serving the story rather than the plot serving as a vehicle for a variety of entertainments. He created a body of work that is notable for its creativity, along with its didacticism. In his Story of Music series, musicologist Howard Goodall notes that the 31-year period between Wagner's death in 1883 and the beginning of World War I saw music being shaken and revitalized by a series of rebellions, including against Wagner's high-mindedness and his insistence on German cultural dominance. However, many of his other innovations would remain influential. As the 19th century started to close, good European art music was defined by what was often called cosmopolitan or universal music, a style initially created by Ludwig van Beethoven. That reached its zenith with Franz Liszt and Richard Wagner. This was Germanic music, and characterized by intellectual complexity, earnestness, and elitism. But even in its own ranks, there were the seeds of rebellion against both Wagner and cosmopolitanism itself. French composers such as Erik Satie, Gabriel Fauré, Claude Debussy, Maurice Ravel, and others abandoned Wagner's earnestness and pretensions, as well as his complex harmonics, in favor of whimsy and clarity. Musical nationalism promoted cultures beyond German music, while many German composers such as Gustav Mahler and even Richard Strauss became more open and experimental. And then there were musical invasions from the East, Asia, and perhaps more importantly, Russia, through composers such as Pyotr Ilyich Tchaikovsky and Nikolai Rimsky-Korsakov. But opera's greatest rebels were Italian. This presentation looks at holiday art music that emerged from Pietro Mascagni, born in 1863 and dying in 1945, and focuses on what became known as Verismo, true to life. Italian opera in this period of musical rebellions had discovered Verismo, or real-life stories. Operas based on legends and myth were still being created, but intimate stories of real people in all their joys and sorrows had taken on new life. It is important to note that Verismo was also true to Wagner's idea of all aspects of the opera serving the plot. Even Wagner would have appreciated the idea that an interlude, or in Italian, an intermezzo, could serve to drive the story forward by providing a pause for the audience to catch its breath. Like opera itself, the intermezzo is a product of musical evolution. In the 18th century, the intermezzo was a comic operatic interlude inserted between acts or scenes of an opera seria. These intermezzi could be substantial and complete works themselves, though they were shorter than the opera seria which enclosed them. In the 19th century, the intermezzo acquired another meaning, an instrumental piece which was either a movement between two others in a larger work or a character piece that could stand on its own. Stylistically, intermezzi of the 19th century are usually lyrical and melodic, especially compared to the movements on either side when they occur in larger works. We can see how this difference can serve to heighten the emotional impact of the surrounding work. As the 19th century drew to a close, Italian opera was driven by a young group of Italian opera artists who created the Giovane Scuola, or Young School. Their work, whose supercharged emotion and heightened vocal power focused on the rawness of life and the effects of poverty, helped fuel a trend towards real life, or verismo. Giacomo Puccini played a particularly significant role in the growth of verismo opera, with works such as La Bohème, Tosca, and Madama Butterfly. Sadly, the verismo trend was short-lived. When Benito Mussolini took control of Italy, paving the way for fascism in the early 1920s, he brought his Romanita ideals to opera and insisted upon works that glorified ancient Rome, losing all sense of verismo. Still, many of the most celebrated intermezzi are from operas of the verismo period. Pietro Mascagni's Cavalleria Rusticana and L'Amico Fritz, Ruggiero Leoncavallo's I Pagliacci, Giacomo Puccini's Manon Lescaut and Sor Angelica, Umberto Giordano's Fedora, Francesco Scilea's Adriana Lecouvreur, and especially that from French composer Jules Massenet's Thais, which became known as his Méditation. Can any of these intermezzi fit in a holiday playlist? Obviously, I think the answer to this question is a firm yes. Although, I admit, the list is limited. It is interesting to note that Pietro Mascagni's fame largely rests on operas that do, in fact, have holiday associations. I've already noted that his Cavalleria Rusticana and L'Amico Fritz head up the short list of famous Italian intermezzi. Believe me, when you hear this music, you will understand why I advocate for their inclusion in the playlists for Easter and Halloween, respectively. Mascagni's opera from 1890, Cavalleria Rusticana, or Honor Code of Country People, based on a play by Giovanni Verga, was not only one of the first, but also remains one of the classic verismo operas. Since 1893, it has often been performed in a so-called cav-pag double bill with Ruggiero Leoncavallo's I Pagliacci. Cavalleria Rusticana was Mascagni's first opera to be completed and performed. It remains his best-known work, with only Iris and L'Amico Fritz still in the standard repertory, and Isabeau and Il Piccolo Marat on the fringes of the Italian repertoire. Its success has been phenomenal ever since its first performance. By the time of Mascagni's death in 1945, The opera had been performed more than 14,000 times in Italy alone. The remarkable Intermezzo is one of the few that is familiar to even non-opera goers. Its music appears in such famous movies as Raging Bull and The Godfather 3. Admittedly, the association with Easter can be somewhat troubling. Cavalleria Rusticana is set in Catholic Sicily during Easter. The timing is important both to the progression of the plot and for its symbolism. The opera describes a society with strict codes which are broken at one's peril. The Easter setting includes a procession, but the story itself can be seen as a rebellion against the social norms embodied by religious customs, which Easter traditions represent. A death from a duel involving marital infidelity and destruction of family. Tridu, Santuzza, Lucia, and others, is the core of the plot. Clearly, this can be seen as a challenge to organized religion's emphasis on morality and the price of sin. However, it does not actually erase the Easter message of salvation itself. So what makes this opera so special? Cavalleria Rusticana is a story of love, lust, blood feud, and betrayal played out against the pageantry of the Easter celebrations in a Sicilian village. It delivers an emotional wallop because of the youthful vigor and musical wealth of its great score, which includes the glorious Easter hymn, Regina Caeli, and the deeply moving Intermezzo. The Intermezzo's tune is based on a hymn heard earlier from within the village church, and it suggests both the peace of country living and the intense individual feelings of the principal characters. Its use in the Intermezzo closes the Easter ceremony and foreshadows the coming disaster. It is in this Intermezzo that we find our instrumental moment from the opera, and the only such moment for Easter. Likewise, the beauty of the music reminds us of Easter's ultimate message of hope. Our Halloween intermezzo has a more positive holiday association. Mascagni's 1891 opera, L'Amico Fritz, premiered on Halloween at the Teatro Costanzi in Rome. The Hamburg premiere in 1892 featured Gustav Mahler conducting. Along with the auspicious premiere date, the intermezzo is suitably haunting for those interested in scary music. The opera's plot about the love between Fritz Kobus and Suzel is actually pretty upbeat with a happy ending, and seems to cut against the grain of a scary holiday. Mascagni demonstrated with this opera another form of rebellion against Wagnerian angst and obsession with destiny. Absent is Cavalleria Rusticana's stark realism, charged eroticism, and blistering, brief, and frenetic segments of music. A Halloween that chills without terrorizing, this opera fits the bill. L'Amico Fritz offers a subdued, idyllic atmosphere that makes it irresistible and charming. The first performance was a triumph. Several numbers were repeated, and there were innumerable curtain calls. Within a year of the premiere, L'Amico Fritz played across Europe. While the opera is probably Mascagni's most famous work after Cavalleria Rusticana, it is rarely performed in the USA. In Italy, L'Amico Fritz is still in the active repertoire. Nonetheless, the intermezzo is an appropriate addition to our Halloween playlist. Mascagni prefigures the heightened drama of the work's final act with an intermezzo marked by unsettling opening chords and a yearning melody for unison strings. Our Italian interlude packs an emotional punch. Mascagni would never again achieve the heights that he realized with his first opera, Cavalleria Rusticana, which provides our Easter intermezzo. Perhaps that is because he could never again capture the tension between real life and aspiration of this gripping work. But we can't deny that his musical gifts were real and affecting. Our Halloween intermezzo from L'Amico Fritz is unforgettable and deserves to be celebrated, even if that means lifting it off the stage. I hope you agree with me that these two intermezzi make great additions to both Easter and Halloween playlists. Well, that was a brief survey on Mascagni's Intermezzi for Easter and Halloween. I hope you enjoyed them both. Please remember to comment, subscribe, and keep listening. This is your host, Tristan Andrew, signing off.